now can we please welcome Steve Marafiote, who's going to talk about this wonderful solar seawater science fiction experiment. It's an absolutely wonderful piece of technology, and this is going to be seriously interesting. Thank you.
Well, I hope so anyway. Thank you for having me along. It's a pleasure to be here. I guess today I really wanted to give you a rundown of what Sundrop is as a business, our origins, our relationship with Coles, and how it's sort of developed and encourage, I guess, and seed some thinking, I guess, of how you can approach Coles and some insights to how we develop projects as a business. The business has been operating now since June of this year. We've been delivering to Coles our tomatoes, but the vision was really set about 6 or 7 years back as an organisation by an individual, our CEO, Philip Sunweber, who's based abroad. And what you see here is the site up at Port Augusta. That's a photograph of the site. Inside the site, the business is actually the highest grade greenhouse that exists in the world. But what's more exciting is probably how we've moved away from traditional farming techniques and how we've really developed what is a sort of low-cost production facility with the highest quality products. And its origins are the most important part, though, because once we understand the problem and how we've solved it, it probably gives you the best insight to why we've taken the tack we've taken. My background, just so everybody knows too, is I'm a third generation farmer as well. So I come from the Adelaide Hills, from Harndorf. So that's my background. My family were in retail and in fruit and vegetable production, distribution. So I've had lots to do with it. I've been involved with Chiquita and recently in potatoes and now into Sundrop. So I can probably empathise with lots of what you go through day to day in your businesses. And the development and the risks that go with running businesses. I guess our process is what I really wanted to talk through though today. You don't need to read all our disclaimers. So as an overview, I guess what started, where the discussion started is our founder really understood the idea that we had finite resources in natural water, that fossil fuels were an unsustainable approach to how we farm. We had volatility in pricing, in our inputs, much the same way in all the aspects that you have in your businesses. And so how do we go about resolving those issues? How do we go about producing? What are our core values? What do we stand for? And for us, it's about the people, the planet, and profitability. We must be profitable as an organisation. Our first approach was really to Coles, and it come about 3 years ago. Philip was on a board with another board member from Coles, had a discussion about the sorts of ideas that they had in this space. The concept was that we wanted to reduce the reliance on natural resources, and let's look at the most cost-efficient way of producing and providing, I guess, sustainable supply during the peak periods where, outside of, what are the traditional peak periods. So what we saw is that Coles had a lump of truss tomatoes in this instance, in this facility, that were all centralised around 3 months of the year, but it's the other 9 months of the year that Coles were missing out on. So that was the opportunity, that was the market opportunity that existed. This is the path of how it developed. So in 2008, the concept was really initiated at that point. So 6, 7 years of history there, where, and much to Simon's point about rejection, our team saw exactly the same thing. So it's quite common that your concept will seem far out, and it does feel like, I was watching the movie The Martian and I thought, geez, that feels like going to work every day, where he's having to science the shit out of Mars. So very, very much so. So like I say, in 2009 we put inside a pilot facility at Port Augusta, and Port Augusta, most people ask me, why did you end up at Port Augusta? And it's a good question. I asked the same question myself. What we really looked at was understanding, okay, what are the market needs? Those 9 months of the year when we needed to produce tomatoes, how could we do that? What were the right aspects we were looking for? So it was about understanding what is the climate we need, what's the humidity we need, what are the heating and cooling costs that we have as a business. So to run a greenhouse, we have to look at those periods, but light is one of the really important points. So The light at Port Augusta sits far better. It's the sunniest point in the world, actually. So it's quite a unique feature of Port Augusta. It has low humidity. It has also access to seawater. So it's very rare that you get access to seawater, low humidity and great light levels. That really just doesn't exist. We sit at the top of a gulf at Port Augusta. So the site was selected, but then the theory had to be proved. So we set up a 0.2 of a hectare facility there. We still have that facility. We do trials in there constantly as a business. Then from there we went to Coles and we said, well, okay, we need to, if we're going to develop along this path, we need to actually, we're going to have to invest a couple of $100 million to develop what we're looking at. And so we committed at that point that we would be willing to provide a $200 million facility, but we wanted a larger contract. And so we asked Coles about that directly, and we said, well, we need assurances around pricing, and we need assurances around tenure of the contract, and we need assurances about takeoff volumes. And Coles come to the table in all of those respects. So I think what I would encourage there is that your negotiations are probably most hampered by your own perceptions of what you think your customer may not want to concede. As I say, ongoing, we've now delivered our first tomatoes in 2016. The site looks quite amazing, actually. What we really tried to do is strip out the traditional greenhouse methods and some of the inputs in there, and these give you what is a typical greenhouse. Ours runs, so greenhouses are generally using around 14,000 litres a week of diesel in their facilities, or they're using gas, or they're using wood chips to heat. So heat is one of the key energy requirements. So we looked at that aspect and we said, well, what can we do to strip that cost out and that variability of what is an input there? In doing that, we created the solar field. So the solar field is about capturing heat. It's 23,788 mirrors that focus towards the tower. The tower aggregates the heat. We store that heat with seawater, so we run seawater up to the top of that tower. We have a 37 megawatt boiler, which is half the capacity of what a power station would have in it, to give you some sort of context. That sits at 117 metres in the sky. We store that energy and we hold 3.5 weeks worth of heat in 2 very large hot water services at the base. So it doesn't, the hot water services don't sound too complicated, but they provide us stability and sort of protection around our business. So we've taken those out. We also have taken out the need for fresh water. So we've utilised, in that case, seawater, and we desalinate that too. So our operating costs, and we also, another third function is we produce a third of our power needs on site as well. So we've taken out the 3 largest aspects of cost, and the fourth one is humans. So labour is our 4th component, that's our largest point. So we consider that as we develop. So the model changes. I won't bore you too much. Some of these details, these are the benefits and some of the approach that we took to Coles early in the piece. So we provided what are the key benefits to Coles, what are the key benefits to our organisation, what are the key benefits to our investors too. So we have investors behind our business, and it's something we aim to do. As I say, that's the greenhouse. We have 4 large 5-hectare greenhouses that are all under glass, a solar field that you can see, and that's the solar field I was talking about in the discussions, and seawater ponds, and the Flinders Ranges in the background, and the St Vincent's Gulf sits on this side, so we're 5 kilometres away from that. The project is a $200 million investment, as I said, and in theory, from early in the piece, you would have thought that that was a pretty hard ask to get up. But it was able to be done, and it was able to be done because we were willing to challenge the norm, and we were willing to challenge the norm with our contracting partner Coles, and both parties were really keen to see this happen. Ours is a larger scale project, but I don't see why it changes for a very small project as well. Our 3 core values are people, planet, and profit, as I've said. Now, planet is super important to our business, so we add always a sustainability aspect, and we've seen that our consumer insights are showing us that that is a growth trend globally, not only in Australia, and as we extend. So we have operations that are based in Portugal, in the US, in the UK, in the Middle East, and Australia as well. And so we see the common thread of that too, that people want to understand and own what is behind a product and a brand. Profits are essential, but the people really do make the business happen. So we put a lot of effort and energy into that aspect as well. That's talking about the delayering system that we've done too. So traditionally we found that a lot of people will go through an agent, or a business will run through an agency to make its way to the market. The real risks in that are you don't have the clarity of the information that comes back, the feedback mechanisms for your business, and also you're adding and labouring your cost structures as well. So there's nothing that an intermediary can provide that probably you couldn't solve for yourselves as well. These are some of our partners, and so we work right across a number of sectors, so all the way through from finance, banking, through to engineering and other aspects as well. It gives you an idea of the sorts of people we've brought to the table for our business that you may need to for your business. That's all. All right, thank you.
That was interesting, all those partnerships, wasn't it? There was a very interesting page of connections around the world there. That was, and the idea of creating your own energy. We live in this sort of energy-rich environment, and lots of energy, but the government taxes the heck out of it. He seems to have got around that by creating his own. Very clever. So now we're going to live at exactly the same level of technological